The Soulblight Gravelords review is on the way, I promise. I'm expecting my copy of the Battletome to arrive tomorrow, so hopefully over the bank holiday weekend I will have time to get that video recorded. But in the meantime, we know from the previews and articles or videos from people that got the book early that a chunk of the older index is unfortunately missing, and a lot of the Cursed City stuff, as well as things like Terrorgeists, are going away in the new Battletome. Now, we thought that they were going to Legends pretty much immediately, or at least I thought that. As soon as the Battletome came out, those units would be gone and relegated to Legends. But it seems that GW have taken at least a little bit of pity on us, because today they released a Battletome Supplement, which gives us a few cool things and at the very least makes the loss of those units sting a tiny bit less. And as you can see, the Battletome Supplement gives us rules for the various units that are going to Legends, but they will still be usable up until the 1st of June 2026. So over a year to still get some use out of those awesome Cursed City models that you may have hanging around. And then even then, when they do go to Legends, of course, they will still have those rules and they will still be usable. You can still keep playing them with your friends. You just can't bring them in any official tournaments. So this is a nice little addition. It does make things a little bit less painful. It brings some updated points as well so that you can use these older models in games for the next year. It also gives us a handy little guide about the new base sizes. So if you want to run things like your old Graveguard as the new Barrow Guard, you can do that. You just need to upsize their bases a little. The new Barrow Guard are on 28.5mm. The Barrow Knights are on 60 by 35, and then of course the massive Draconith is on a big 160mm. Funnily, they didn't include Vordry in this to say what he is now on if you want to use the old model as the newer one, but I mean, I guess that's maybe because he isn't technically being removed, he's just getting a new updated model, but you would have thought they would have still clarified that he is indeed on that new 160mm base. But in any case, overall, the supplement gives us a bit more lifespan out of these units, and I think that it's not good per se, but as I said, it does make me anyway feel a little bit better knowing that we still do have at least a year's worth of use from some of those older kits and models. Now, the actual faction battle traits and rules, they will be covered in the Battletome review, of course, but the long and short of it is they haven't really changed all that much. We still have the Rising Dead allowing a unit to arise from reserves, but now they come in either 6 inches from a battlefield edge or wholly within 6 inches of our new terrain pieces, the Cursed Sepulchres, making them a really vital part of our battle plan going forward. Deathly Invocation still gives us a heal on up to 3 Death Rattle or Deadwalker units, whilst our unit return mechanic has changed from being once per turn to being once per battle round. So you are more limited on how often you can do it now, but as a trade-off for that, it's now free. It doesn't require that command point like it did in the older index. So your mileage might vary on that, but not requiring that command point is, for me, a fairly good trade, and you still do get to choose to do this in either your or your opponent's hero phase, so you still have some flexibility in when you do it, you just can't do it every single hero phase. The Hunger also sticks around, giving you a bit of healing on your vampiric units as they fight, and then the only sort of new trait is of course the Ancient Burial Sites, which is our terrain features. You can set up 3 of them on the battlefield, and 2 of them, as per the battle trait, are set up after armies have deployed. So you can be a bit tricksy with this in terms of how you want to set them up on the board. There are some restrictions and limitations, but it can allow you to put them down in a way that supports your armies a bit better and helps you get some units onto areas of the board where you need them, near objectives or near to certain parts of the battlefield with your Rising Dead ability. So there are no huge changes here, but this supplement does give us a nice little treat in that we do actually get a brand new battle formation to use. And this one is called the Legions of Ulfenkarn and is of course all about those Cursed City models. The rule is called Wardens of the Wolf, and what this does is it allows you to return an extra model to any units that are having models returned to them if they are infantry or beast units and they are wholly within 12 inches of Belladama, Radakar the Wolf or Radakar the Beast, Ivya Volga, Lady Annika, Kritza, Torgillius, Gorslav or Watch Captain Halgrim. Essentially what this does is it boosts your Deathly Invocation and allows you to get up to 4 skeletons or zombies back instead of just 3. Now that may not seem like much, but of course Deathly Invocation goes across 3 separate units, so this can be getting you back 3 extra models every time you do Deathly Invocation, and over the course of a game, that could in theory be getting you back an extra 10 or 15 models. Essentially, you could get an extra whole unit's worth of models out of this formation rule, and that isn't too shabby. No, it's maybe not the best formation out of the bunch for sure, but it is still quite nice, and I do think it's quite a thematic one for the units you are going to be bringing and these hero characters that it kind of works around. So if you did want to run that style of game, and you did want to give these units, a nice send-off before they go to Legends, then I do think this formation looks like it's going to be one that you probably will at least want to try out. And if you really want to focus on those Virkos units, which I do, then this is definitely going to be one that you will want to give a go. Of course, we do also get the unit war scrolls that aren't in the Battletome. Now it's worth noting all of these appear to still be usable even in the new Battletome. It's not just for this specific formation, so all of these units can, in theory, be taken in the new Battletome in any of those main formations. It's just that after June 26, they will be going to Legends, so after that point, it will only be the units in the Battletome that you have access to. But for now, you will be able to bring these in the main Battletome formations as well. And we start off with Torgillius the Chamberlain. These also do all have points. It's worth noting, GW have given out a new updated points schedule, so they have all been updated with how much they are going to cost to bring you, and they will be on the screen on the side now for you to see. But Torgillius is 180 points. He still has the same stat wheel as he did before, a 5-inch move, 5 health, 6+ save, 2 control, and the standard death 6-up ward. He is also a 1-cast wizard, and he's still got his pretty solid spell in Failing Fortitude, which is cast on a 6, and it gives an enemy unit within 18 inches of him -1 to their wound rolls until your next turn, which is actually a fairly solid debuff. It can go a long way to keeping some of your squishier units alive, especially when you combo it with the fact that you are bringing back 1 extra zombie or skeleton whenever you do heal them up. He also gets a really nice rule where he gets to cast Deathly Invocation to heal a unit even if another hero unit has used that ability this turn, so it does give you a huge spread of healing into your army, and it means that you could effectively, in best case scenario, heal up to 6 different units in your army if they're all injured enough, and potentially get yourself 6 extra models back with the formation rule. So that's actually a really strong, pro for him, and it does mean you can go a long way to keeping your units alive. You specifically do have to target units that haven't been targeted already with Deathly Invocation, so there is no doubling up on a unit for an invocation to get, 6 models back and then some extra on top of that. But if you do have a few units of zombies or skeletons spread out over your board and over the battlefield, this can really help you to keep all of them at fuller health for that little bit longer. He also gets a slightly buffed shooting profile, going from his old D6 shot attack to a flat 6 shots, which is actually much, much better. It's still 4s and 4s, 1 rend and D3 damage, so it's not the best profile in terms of actually getting those hits and wounds through, but going from an average of 3.5 shots to a flat 6 is, almost twice as good, and it does make him a lot scarier into any enemies that are within 18 inches of him. Watch Captain Halgrim is also here to lead his loyal skeletons. At 110 points, he is a bit more expensive than just your regular generic White King, but he does have some nice rules to help make your skeletons a bit more reliable at getting around the board. He himself has 5 health and a 4-up save, which isn't amazing, but then in melee he's got 4 attacks which hit on 4s, wound on 3s with 2 rend and 2 damage, and also have crit mortals, so that can be quite spicy, especially with that 2 rend. That is actually quite good. On average, he will chop down about 3 4-up save infantry by himself, so he's not amazing, but he can do some work. But then the bonuses that he brings to death rattle units around him are that he gives them disciplined advance, meaning they can run a minimum of 4. If you roll less than that, you can just change it to a 4, and that essentially lets them guarantee that they at least double their movement when they choose to run, which is really useful on a slow 4-inch move unit, to be honest. He also then gets a fairly nice, if generic, hero buff where he can let a unit of death rattle skeletons fight straight after him with Echoes of the Watch. Basically, he gets to fight, and then a unit of skeletons in his combat range can fight straight after him. So he's not awful. I don't think he is as good personally as a regular White King, but he does have some uses if you want that extra mobility. He does have a very cool model, and to be honest, if you want to get him and use him either as Halgrim for the next year and then just use him as a generic White King after that, you can very easily do that. He's the same base size, he does look like a White King, so I think you can get away with that pretty easily. Another old favourite is Gorslav the Gravekeeper. He also stays pretty much identical. He is a fairly pricey 120 points, which for a 6 health, 6-up save, 6-up ward unit is not exactly great. He's also not got the best melee profile, 5 attacks, 4s and 3s, 1 rend and 2 damage. But why everyone loves Gorslav is his zombie focused rules. Keeper of the Corpse Gardens gives him a 4-up ward when he is within combat range of a friendly Dead Walker Zombies unit, albeit at the expense of passing off those wounds onto nearby zombies when he passes a ward save. So it doesn't exactly save you damage per se, it just puts it onto a cheap throwaway zombie instead of onto Gorslav. He also gets to keep Arise, which has actually changed quite a lot. It no longer lets you return a couple of zombies to up to 3 units wholly within 12 inches of him in your movement phase. Instead, it goes back to actually an older version of the rule, where he can, once per battle, when you are using the Endless Legion's ability, pick Gorslav to set up a replacement zombie unit that is full-sized rather than half-sized, and it can be set up wholly within 12 inches of Gorslav and more than 3 inches away from enemies. Now, it can't charge after that, so this can't get you an easy charge into an enemy, but this can be super good for move blocking an enemy or just acting as an unexpected screen to protect some of your more valuable units. And of course, getting a full unit back rather than a half strength one is a massive buff. A massive blob of 40 zombies is 280 points, so getting back that full 280 point value instead of just 140 is very strong, and it can give you a huge advantage in just trying to tie down an enemy unit that was trying to charge one of your more important units. Next up, we have the Bloodborne. These ladies still come in a unit of 3 for 150 points, so they are 50 points each, which is pricey. They do get you a 3 health, 6-up save profile with the standard 6-up ward. They've got a fairly good 8-inch move, and they're also relatively hitty. They've got 3 attacks each. They are 3s and 3s, 1 rend and 2 damage, so it's not too bad in terms of their output. They also get to make a sneaky move at the end of the enemy turn to help them either get up the board to make a charge in your next turn, or to get back away from an enemy or out of trouble, or even onto an objective to help you get more board control. So that's a really strong ability. It does also automatically go off now rather than requiring a 3+ like it did in the index, but to counter that, it has also caught a little nerf in that it's now only at the end of the enemy turn rather than at the end of any turn. So you get to use it less, but I do like the fact that it's much more reliable, not needing that 3+. And for me, who rolls a lot of 1s and 2s, I would say overall I think it's an improvement. They also get to keep Cling to the Shadows as well, making them untargetable if they are within 1 inches of a terrain feature, unless that enemy unit that's targeting them is within 9 inches of them. So that just helps them to stay alive from enemy shooting a bit better as they move up the board. So they're okay, they can do some decent output, and they can actually get up the board somewhat reliably now. They are just still very squishy, so even in melee, if you don't kill what you're charging them into, they will probably just die on the return swings. The Vargskir, on the other hand, he isn't okay. He's just still an absolute waste of points. 160 points for an 8 health, 5 up save, 6 up ward model, with a decent 8-inch move to be sure, but he's still a beast, so he's only OC1, which sucks. And then whilst it's really good, he can make a 3d6 charge thanks to Bounding Haste, he just doesn't do much in melee. He's got 6 attacks in total, all of them are 4s to hit, 2s to wound, 4 of them are 1 rend and 2 damage, and 2 of them are 2 rend and 3 damage, which does sound scary, but even into a 4-up save unit, he's only averaging about 4 wounds, so maybe 4 dead infantry, which for 160 points just really isn't good. He is pricey, he's not that killy, he's incredibly squishy for his points, and it's a shame because he has an absolutely amazing model. I really wish it was good. He's just not. Now, a unit that actually did get a points drop in the latest update is the Kosagi Night Guard. They are now 110 points instead of 120, so just 55 points each. For a 6-inch move, 4 health, 5 up save model with a 6 up ward, you could say that's not awful, I guess. And they also have a fairly nice niche in that they are a good bodyguard. It's only for Radakar the Wolf or Radakar the Beast, but they do give Radakar and themselves a 5-up ward when they're within his combat range, which I do think is good. It's really good for them. It's also incredibly good for Radakar to keep him alive. I still think overall they're a bit pricey because they do only have 2 attacks each, which are 4s and 2s, 2 rend and 3 damage. And I mean, that's not an awful profile, but I just wish they were a tiny bit better. I wish they maybe had 3 attacks each or were a little bit cheaper. I think previously, maybe in last edition, they had a rule where they also got a bonus attack from being near to Radakar. Maybe if they had that, if they were near him, they gave both of them a 5-up ward and also got +1 attack. That would make them worth their points. I think they're reasonably close. I just don't think they are quite good enough yet to warrant taking. We also have some non-Curse City units that are going to Legends next year, and the first up is the Bloodseeker Palanquin. This absolutely gorgeous model is a big loss to the army in my opinion. It is a real shame that it's going, I think. It has actually had a small points drop, it's down 10 points down to 220, but aside from that it's largely the same as it was in the index. It's got a really good 10-inch move, it's got 12 health, a 4-up save and a 6-up ward, and it's got a really good control rule with Whales of the Damned. This drops enemy control scores by 3 whenever they are within 12 inches of it. And with its decent base size, this means it can just hop around near to objectives and potentially debuff enemy units on maybe even 2 objectives and help you win both of them with your other units. So it can be a really great utility piece for helping you score objectives and win the game that way. It also is able to do a once per battle ability, which is called a Promising Concoction. This allows it to pick 3 friendly vampire units wholly within 12 inches, and they get +1 attack to their melee weapons for the rest of the turn. Now, this thing itself is a vampire unit. It's also a 1-cast wizard, which does add even more value to it. But adding 1 attack to either this or maybe even better, Blood Knights or Prince Vordry or even just something like your Eskurgan Trueblades can let them punch up much more effectively into most enemy units. So it's a really, really strong rule when you need that one turn to get the absolute most out of your vampire units. It's also got some not awful attacks on its own. It's got 5 attacks with the Sanguinarch Stiletto, which is 3s and 3s, 1 rend and 2 damage, and then 10 attacks, 10 companion attacks from the Spectral Host. These are only 4s and 4s, no rend and 1 damage, so they're not very good, but they might chip off a few wounds from an enemy, for instance. It's mainly the stiletto attacks that you are hoping to get through, and they do also have the crit 2 hits rule, so they can actually do a fair bit of damage with those. But as I said, I think giving the +1 attack buff to something like Vordry or Blood Knights is probably a better use of it overall, but it's not a bad utility piece just for getting that objective control a bit better on your side of things, for being a 1-cast wizard, for being fairly maneuverable, and for just doing some okay damage into sort of weaker chaff infantry. And speaking of a good thing to actually put that buff on, the Vampire Lord on Zombie Dragon is also here, going to Legends. He is still the same 400 points, and as far as I can tell, he is exactly the same rules-wise. He's a 1-cast wizard, he's a vampire unit, he can fly, 16 health, a 3-up save, a 12-inch move, some pretty solid shooting with the Pestilential Breath, which fires d6 shots at 2s and 4s, 1 rend and 2 damage, and then some absolutely terrifying melee with the Dynastic Weapon and the Dragon's attacks. In total, you can get up to 14 attacks. 3 of them are 4s and 2s, 2 rend and 3 damage. 7 of them are 4s and 2s, 1 rend and 2 damage. And then the final 4 are 3s and 3s, 2 rend and then 3 damage on the charge. So it really can rip and tear most enemy units to pieces very, very easily. It's also still got some pretty okay rules. That which should not be reduces enemy control scores after it's charged. So you pick an enemy unit that you charged and it reduces the control score by 1, which does help you to just flip objectives. You've got a fairly decent OC of 5 on this thing. So against some smaller units, you can potentially flip an objective even if you don't kill any enemies thanks to that ability. But then you also get a rampage in Bloodthirsty Dominance. And at the end of any turn, you roll a number of dice equal to an enemy unit you are in combat with that you charge this turn, and you roll a number of dice equal to its health characteristic, and for each 6 you do a mortal damage. So against something like an 18 health Nagash, you will on average get about 3 mortals, which isn't amazing, I'll admit, but it can help you to maybe just finish off an enemy at the end of a combat if you didn't manage to kill it in melee, and it's a just fairly solid rampage that works very well as you go into those tougher, higher health enemies, which the Vampire Lord wants to be going into anyway because he's got such good high strength, sort of high damage attacks. Also here, despite getting a new model, is Kado Ezekiel. This is his solo performance, with his new unit being the trio of the Blades of the Hollow King. Kado himself here is 150 points. He's got a solid 6 health, 4-up save, 6-up ward, and some really good melee with his Ezekielian Greatsword, hitting and wounding on 3s with 2 rend, 2 damage, and then the crit auto wound rule means that he can chop through enemies really quite effectively. He still gets his unique spell, Retribution or Salvation, which lets him either do d3 mortal damage to an enemy unit within 12 inches, or give a friendly Death Rattle or Deadwalker unit wholly within 12 inches -1 to be wounded for the turn. It is cast on a 7, so it can be a bit tricky to get off, but his other rule, the Court of the Lost, lets him pick a buff in your hero phase, and he can either get a 12-inch move, or +1 to his casting rolls, or the crit mortal rule on his weapon. So if you really need that spell to go off, the +1 to cast would be perfect. Otherwise, in the early game, a 12-inch move is very, very strong, or if you are already locked up in combat, then maybe going for the crit mortals can just help him do a bit more damage than usual. He is an absolutely gorgeous model and he's still relatively new, so if you prefer him running solo instead of using the new Regiment of Renown, then this is going to absolutely be the way to do it, at least until next year. The final unit in this supplement is the Terrorgeist, which is alas also going to Legends. I'm intrigued personally to see what happens to this in the Flesh Eater Court's army book, whether it will be getting a new model there or if it is going to be going completely from the game. But certainly for the Soulblight, this is still a 240 point monster that's got 14 health, a 5-up save and a 6-up ward. So it's not exactly tanky for its price. It does still have a fairly scary d6 damage shooting attack though, but it is only 1 shot that hits on 4s, so again, it's not exactly reliable. In melee though, it is a bit scarier. The Talons are 6 attacks that are 4s and 2s, 1 rend and 2 damage, but then the Maw is 3 very good attacks. They're 4s and 2s, but they are 2 rend and they are d6 damage. And if you roll a 6 to hit with the Fanged Maw, it is a critical hit, and it just does a flat 6 mortal damage. Now rolling 3 dice, as that's the number of attacks the Maw gets, rolling 3 dice gets you about a 42% chance of rolling at least 1 6. So no, it's not super reliable, but it's not that unlikely to happen that it isn't going to happen maybe once or twice in most games. And doing just a flat 6 mortals is hilariously good. It gets even better when you spike it and have those really rare occasions where you roll 3 6s and just end up wiping out an entire 18 models or 9 Chaos Warriors or even 4.5 Chaos Knights in just a single go with no saves allowed, which is really, really good. It also still has the Sonic Assault rule, which is your Rampage. This is after you've charged, you pick an enemy unit that you charged, and you roll a dice for each model in the target unit, and if 3 or more of the dice that you roll are the same value, then you get strike first. If 6 or more of the dice that you roll are the same, then you get strike first and that enemy unit can't use commands. So once again, it is a bit swingy, it's unlikely to happen all that often, but certainly into bigger blobs of say 20 models, it's not very unlikely that you're going to get at least 3 of the same dice, so you can almost guarantee that you're going to be getting at the very least strike first on your Terrorgeist if you go into bigger blobs of enemies. And that is the supplement. It is a nice thing that GW have done just to add a bit more excitement and incentive to run those units for another year before they go to Legends, I think. Overall, it is a shame when stuff does go to Legends, of course, especially when it's really still so new, as is the case of Curse City. It only came out a few years ago. But I do think the formation they've given us seems quite fun, and I like the fact that they've at least given us that extra year to use these models and get some more use and value out of those Curse City models that are so cool and so fun. Like, yes, I wish they were staying around, but I understand why GW are sending them to Legends, and at least they've given us that time to still play with them and given us some new rules to actually play around with them to kind of get the most out of them. So I'm glad they did it this way. I'm glad they didn't just relegate them to Legends straight away, and hopefully, if nothing else, you will at least feel you get a bit more value out of those models for the next year. But as always, I'd really love to know what you make of this supplement and whether you will be trying out the Legions of Ulfenkarn, that new formation, over the next year. Let me know all of your thoughts and theories and ideas down in the comments below. And as always, thank you very much for watching. Please do like and subscribe for more Warhammer content from me. But until next time, I'll catch you later, guys.